It's hard creating memorable characters in horror. For every Nancy Thompson, there's an obscure lead that is completely forgotten about by the time we venture on to our next film of depravity. Yet the Nightmare on Elm Street series has always managed to bring them out of the woodwork. Alice, Dan, Greta, and Yvonne are amongst the characters that I still think of when watching other entries. And when you're getting to the 4th sequel in a series, these are some unexpected commendations. Plus, I mean, this is the film where someone besides Robert Englund plays Freddy, technically. But more on that later, because today on Real Slashers, we're getting under the covers with The Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child.
You brought me back to give you life, but now I must take yours.
We'll see, bitch. We'll just see.
I'm Tyler Nichols with JoBlo Horror Originals, and I hope you're ready to go down the Nightmare 5 rabbit hole. Don't you just love when a horror sequel uses a prior entry to springboard off into the next tale of debauchery? Despite the misstep of Part 2 following a completely rando in Nancy's old house, the rest of the series has been sure to follow the survivors from each subsequent film. At the end of Part 4, Alice Johnson defeated Freddy and she got her man. So it's reasonable to see the next film starting with Alice and Dan having sex? Well then, this movie is really swinging for the fences. While I joke, it's actually a very smart way to start the film, as it actually springboards off the prior entry, gives us the characters that we know, and sets up the baby for later. Not to mention every horror fan's love for some flesh, naked or otherwise. As with most Elm Street films, Dream Child follows a lead girl, this time Alice, as Freddy tries to take her out and her friends. This basic structure has worked for multiple films, so why change it now? But this one does introduce a pretty cool baby angle. The visuals in the film are out of this world, with Alice being put through the ringer right from the beginning. She's thrown from her shower into an insane asylum to give her a front row view of Freddy's conception. She has a rough go of it in this film, with her pregnancy allowing Freddy to use her as a conduit. Babies are constantly sleeping after all. It's honestly a really interesting concept and one that I could see being explored in another film. You know, if we were to ever actually get another Elm Street. Dream Child is also a surprisingly pro-life film, giving the fetus in Alice's baby full sentience. With the father passing early in the story, they don't even broach any possible termination. Hell, we even get to see the baby fully grown up. Then there's Dan's parents saying that they'll take the baby once he's born, thinking that Alice isn't fit to raise him. It practically feels like this could be an after-school special at times. I'd argue that Alice's friend group is amongst the best in the entire franchise. They are so damn likable, and seem like they actually genuinely enjoy each other's company.
I have to go gnash my teeth for the paparazzi.
The gorgeous model doesn't look down on the comic book geek, which feels very anti-80s, with its love for clicks. In fact, Greta deserves a lot more credit for being a layered character when she could have just fallen into a more one-dimensional box, like, say, Debbie from Part 4. Sorry, Debbie. She practically could have been a lead with the complexities that the writers give her. One argument that could easily be made against the film is its relationship with Gore. Unfortunately, the movie was completely destroyed by the MPAA, and the studio cut it up like no one's business. This means most of the deaths feel like they're being prematurely cut off. Sure, Dan returns, but unfortunately gets taken out on his motorcycle, and we hardly even get to see it. It's this weird amalgamation of body horror, and it's way too brief. Check out the uncut version for one gnarly death. Greta's death was also made a bit more gross, with Freddy opening up her stomach and starting to feed her its contents. I'd argue that Greta has one of the most brutal deaths of the series, especially given her model background, and this cut bit would have easily taken it to an even more disgusting level. Conversely, the lamest death in the movie definitely has to go to Mark, the comic book nerd. While the concept of Freddy attacking in this way is quite fun, and the execution isn't half bad, it really lacks that extra oomph. But we'll touch on that further in slicing up a scene. Shockingly, Yvonne actually makes it to the end of the story, which I'm not going to lie, I like more and more every time I see the film. Alice has already lost so much. It's a silver lining that she doesn't lose yet another friend, though I'd consider Yvonne to be probably the less friendly of them all, especially considering that she's the one friend who believes her the least when Alice initially tells them all about Freddy. Definitely could have gone for Greta surviving instead. When it came to filming, the actress herself didn't have the greatest time, being deathly sick during her nightmare sequence with Freddy. Guess there's always a give and take when it comes to this franchise. And it's not just the friend group that stands out, as even Alice's father gets time to shine. In the fourth film, he's just an alcoholic who his own kids are afraid of. He had even shot a death that they just had cut. And because of that, he could be brought back for part 5. And Alice's disappointment at no one being there for a graduation is quickly removed as we see her father is actually trying. The Elm Street series has always been great about allowing characters to escape the boxes that they're put into. Gotta love that character growth. We should also probably talk about Jacob, Alice's son and conduit for Freddy in the story. Whit Hertford does wonderful in the role and brings a certain creepiness factor. He's one of those quintessential creepy horror kids from the 80s, and it's great. The ending of the film sees Alice heading to the dream world to confront Freddy. See, Freddy has been using her sleeping child as a way to kill her friends. There's even an implication that Freddy is trying to possess poor Jacob, which obviously would be no bueno for Alice. Meanwhile, Yvonne finds Amanda Kruger's remains at the asylum, which means Amanda can join the fight in the dream world, for reasons. And Amanda being Freddy's weakness is actually a nice touch, with him clearly being scared of her. There are a million ways in which this could have failed, but I think they pull it off quite well. Freddy's reduced back to baby form and taken away. The nightmare is finally over.
Mark, help me, please.
Greta? Is she delicious or am I crazy?
You leave her alone!
Right, son?
I want to briefly touch on the comic book kill, as it's one that has always baffled me. When you watch it, it's actually pretty well done on a technical level. The 2D animation blends well with the 3D environments, and I love the actual comic that Mark is looking at. It's essentially Dream Child in comic book form, and it's so damn cool. Once he's pulled into the dream, the contrast between his colorized clothes and the black and white environment combine for one slick visual. You definitely can't claim that the production wasn't trying, so why the hell doesn't it work? Maybe it's because the paper nature of the scene prevents us from getting any blood, outside of Mark's arm at the end. Heck, we get blood when Freddy's teasing him over Greta's death, so it would have been nice to have some kind of blood element. We need consequences. Or maybe it's Freddy himself who first appears fucking skateboarding towards camera. I mean, it's kind of hard to make this look intimidating. His Super Freddy form is also pretty silly, though it does give us an alternate Freddy look, which I always dig. Or maybe it's the fact that the death itself looks like some kind of craft project versus an actual kill with stakes. I'd argue that it's all of these elements combining for what ultimately comes across as silly and unsatisfying. Mark deserved better.
It's a boy!
We've talked about Freddy Krueger a lot in this series, let alone this channel, so I'm not going to retread the same bits about a child murderer. Let's focus on the new elements that we get here, because we actually get to know how Freddy was even conceived. We heard in Dream Warriors that Krueger was the bastard son of 100 maniacs, but we actually get to see that in play, with Alice taking the form of Amanda Krueger in the insane asylum. She's sexually assaulted by the inmates, one of which looks suspiciously like Robert Englund. I just love that this terrible, terrible human being also has to have this absolutely awful, horrible origin tale. It's so over the top and puts Freddy even further up the scale of evil wickedness. He wasn't just conceived, he was conceived as part of this unspeakable act where we don't even know the father, as it could be any of these 100 maniacs. Though, I'm pretty sure we have an idea. Freddy's rebirth comes when a baby Freddy is dream birthed from Amanda Krueger, and it returns to where Freddy died at the end of Part 4 and regenerates. It's a silly explanation, but at least the visuals are interesting, especially given the story focus on Alice's own child. Plus, the rebirth is a pretty great visual, with the floor rising up and Freddy appearing in all of his glory. I mean, hell, it's better than dog piss. And controversial opinion alert, but I don't think Freddy's look is that bad here. Sure, it's a little too pink at points, but it honestly looks pretty great overall, especially in certain lighting, with them avoiding the overly done pizza face aesthetic that took over in Freddy's Dead. And Robert Englund has such a fun energy to him. But I mean, when isn't he incredible? I also feel like we need to talk about the fact that we actually get someone else playing Freddy during a scene in the film. And yes, we could technically count any stuntman that has portrayed the character, whether it's the fire stunt from Part 1 or whatever. But I'd argue this is a bit different, as he actually gets to act as the character, not a simple stunt that's over in a flash. Michael Bailey Smith appears as Super Freddy, and it's quite the look. Given that this takes place in a comic book nightmare, the accentuated look is rather interesting.
Your birth was a curse on the whole of humanity. I will not allow it to happen again.
A Nightmare on Elm Street 5: The Dream Child released in the United States on August 11, 1989, and made $8.1 million on its opening weekend. The film would end its tally at $22.1 million, making it the highest-grossing slasher of the year. Even still, New Line had unreasonable expectations for their Elm Street series due to prior success, and they were disappointed in this end result. The movie sits at a measly 30% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is an absolute travesty. But it's not just critics that were disappointed with the final product, as even the filmmakers involved expressed disappointment. Director Stephen Hopkins is quite embarrassed of the film, saying, "What started out as an okay film with a few good bits turned into a total embarrassment. I can't even watch it anymore." I'd say that's a bit harsh. While yes, The Dream Child wasn't well liked upon release, it's been given a re-examination by fans, who appreciate its imagery and the out-there narrative. While it still ranks in the lower half of the series, that's more a testament to the quality of the rest than a dig at this film. Because whether it's the incredible matte paintings or the complex narrative about life in the womb, this entry stands out. When it comes to physical media, we've yet to get The Dream Child in any significant way, but with the recently announced 4K for the original Elm Street, there have been rumors of a big old box set of the series on the horizon. Here's holding out hope that it stands alongside the wonderful Friday the 13th and Halloween box sets from Scream Factory. God knows Freddy is deserving of the love. And who knows, maybe we could even get an uncut version of Part 5? Maybe? A man can certainly dream. What do you think of A Nightmare on Elm Street 5: The Dream Child? Where would you rank it in the series? Which is your favorite final girl between Nancy, Alice, and Kristen? Let us know in the comments and we'll see you in the next one.
Sweet dreams, Jacob Daniel.